Welcome to the Stellar Vault. Say hi in the comments to awaken the archive. Then like, subscribe, and let the tale begin.
The railgun hit the elementary school first. The children were outside for recreation, their laughter still echoing between the dome's walls when the flash came. A line of molten glass carved itself across the courtyard, the shockwave folding bodies and stone alike into a single cloud of ash. The sound did not linger. The silence afterward was worse. Above the colony hung the Vrekar Dread Spire, a warship shaped like a jagged spearhead of black alloy, its surface alive with pulsing crimson veins. The ship belonged to the Kryell Dominion, a species whose cultural doctrine worshipped fear as strength. They had not come for resources. They had not come to conquer. They came to annihilate. Every blast was a message to the Galactic Council. The Kryell feared nothing. Humanity, to them, was no more than vermin, an infestation to be burned out for sport. The second salvo fell on the hospital dome. Transparent walls shattered, spilling fire and bodies into the dust. Survivors ran not to fight, but to shield the wounded, dragging them across broken streets, while the sky itself trembled with the Dread Spire's roar. The Dominion's pilots did not fire blindly. They chose their targets with deliberate cruelty, cutting through schools, clinics, shelters, places where defiance had no chance to grow. From orbit, the Dominion ensured every lens was open, every frequency hijacked. The massacre was not a hidden strike. It was spectacle. On council worlds thousands of light years away, alien ministers and delegates found their chambers hijacked by the unblinking feed. They watched railguns tear through glass domes, saw fathers shielding their children with bare arms, saw mothers carrying blood-slick bundles that would never breathe again. The Dread Spire's guns lingered on every scream, every collapse, every act of futile defiance. The message was not coded, nor subtle. This is what happens when vermin forget their place. When the railguns fell silent, the weapon came. A core of white fire erupted from the Dread Spire's keel, lancing into the atmosphere with the weight of a star. The sky ignited in a bloom that stripped clouds from the heavens. Temperatures spiked by hundreds of degrees in seconds. Oceans hissed into steam. Forests blackened into dust. Every living thing, man, beast, bird and crop, dissolved into vapor and ash beneath the wave. 2 million human souls erased in the span of a single breath. The colony's planetary beacon stuttered once, then went dark. The broadcast did not end there. The Dread Spire amplified its signal, pushing the sterilization wave across the galactic relay net. Billions witnessed the light of a colony's death, forced to stare at silence where voices had been. The Kryell Dominion left no doubt. They had not destroyed humanity's outpost for conquest. They had erased it as theater. On council worlds, debate halls froze. The Vurok chittered in disbelief, their 4 jaws clattering as if struck dumb. The towering Ikari, known for their ceremonial stoicism, trembled with their iridescent hides shifting pale, a sign of terror they never revealed in public. Even the hard-shelled Maltheri, whose culture valued brutality, lowered their horns in unease. The Kryell had violated every unspoken law of interstellar conduct. No quarter, no prisoners, no surrender offered. Just annihilation. Yet as the chambers filled with horrified silence, another current swirled. Admiration. Some species whispered that such ruthlessness was proof of dominance. Others muttered that humanity's rise had been inevitable, and this was the natural correction. To the Kryell Dominion, This division was victory enough. If the galaxy feared them, if the galaxy wavered, then their display had succeeded. The dread spire turned in orbit once the atmosphere cleared. The Krail Dominion cut its broadcast not with words, but with a final image, the charred sphere, lifeless, rotating in silence. A world erased, catalogued in council records not as a battle lost, but as an ecosystem destroyed. And now, the galaxy waited for humanity's reply. The broadcasting ping sounded like any other transmission. Officer David Cameron leaned over his console aboard Argus Station, the monitoring outpost that watched over humanity's frontier worlds. With a tap of his hand, the incoming feed bloomed across the holoscreen. He expected a trade update, maybe another council directive. Instead, the feed did not carry voices. It carried fire. The first image froze the operations deck. A railgun slug striking the elementary dome, children scattering beneath the white-hot line before the entire structure folded inward. Then the hospital dome, shattering like glass under a hammer. Each strike was clear, deliberate, methodical. Cameron's throat tightened, his finger hovering above the control to cut the broadcast. But it was too late. Every console, every viewport on Argus Station was hijacked. The Massacre of Asgard 3 played on every wall. Inescapable. Admiral Hugo Strauss stood at the center of the deck, his broad shoulders drawn tight, blue-gray eyes fixed on the screen. 55 years of service had etched fine lines across his face, but his stare was unbroken, cold, even as the screams echoed from the speakers. His jaw clenched, the light brown of his close-cropped hair catching the screen's glow. Silver streaks at his temples, marking the weight of command. Then came the weapon. The dread spire's white core flared, and in silence, the entire planet of Asgard, 3 died before their eyes. 2 million lives, extinguished in a wave of fire and ash. Cameron whispered something, a prayer, a curse, but Strauss remained stone still. The Admiral inhaled once, slow and heavy, as if drawing the weight of the entire atrocity into his chest. When the screen went black, he finally spoke. "Send it to the Council." His voice rang like iron across the deck. "They've turned a blind eye to the Krail Dominion's crimes. Now it's spiraled out of control, and we're the ones who've paid the price. Let them hear our answer." The deck hung in silence. Screens still bled with static from the terminated feed. Some officers stared at their boots. Others clenched fists at their sides. Forwarding the recording, Cameron said at last. Uncut. The relay transmission left Argus, sharp, direct, and headed straight for the Council. Cameron tapped his knuckle against the holotable. The console blinked once and sealed the archive. What happened on Asgard 3 was no longer just a report. It was proof, and now it was in their hands. By the time the message reached the High Council's broadcast net, the chamber was already filling with their faces, inhuman physiologies framed by towering, indifferent halls. Everyone pulled into the same frozen moment. The holograms of Asgard 3 hung before them like a new moon of accusation. The High Counselor materialized beneath the chamber's vaulted light, a being whose skin shifted through cool, apologetic colors, whose hands folded in the ritual of condolence the Council preferred when balance needed to be kept. In his tone was the practiced inflection of officials who had spent centuries softening absolutes into committees. "We," the High Counselor began, and the syllable carried the weight of 1,000 procedural rules. "We have seen the images. The Council will open an inquiry. We will convene the tribunal, dispatch investigators, and, where guilt is established, Measures will be taken to punish those responsible. A low murmur spread through the chamber. Some faces tightened. Others held a faint, dangerous glint. Admiration for the Cryal's ruthlessness. The High Counselor's hands moved in a measured gesture, a parliamentary dance meant to pacify both outrage and hesitation. Strauss did not attend in person, but the report from the human envoy cut clean. 2 lines, transmitted without flair. "How long until the tribunal sits?" the envoy asked. Tone level, testing timelines, not patience. Silence followed. Protocol lurched into motion, slowed again by the weight of what had happened. The High Counselor recited timelines like shields. 48 cycles to convene, 72 to gather testimony, weeks to frame an indictment that might survive splintered jurisdictions and diplomatic immunity. When the numbers came, the envoy's voice went flat. The reply that followed drifted back to Argus like a signal already too cold to matter. Strauss answered not with ritual, but with policy, delivered like a field order. No need. No one cheered. His refusal wasn't a statement of defiance. It was an action, clear, final, without theater. "The Krail Dominion is now our enemy," the message said. "Their flagship, the Vrekar Dreadspire, and those responsible for the destruction of Asgard III are targets. Humanity will not negotiate. We will not sit in councils that treat extermination as demonstration. We will act." The chamber shifted. The High Counselor's colors faltered, an unbalanced hue that, in their dialect, meant alarm. A few delegates recoiled at the bluntness. Others said nothing, calculating. Human will had just become part of the equation. No further messages followed. Strauss let the words hang, uninterpreted. He made no threats. He didn't promise retaliation. He issued a verdict where bureaucracy had expected delay. Then he folded his hands again, steady, cold, composed, and unshaken by the weight of the dead. Around him, no one celebrated. Charts were pulled, vectors plotted, interdiction routes drafted. The human answer had been sent. The galaxy had been warned. The Dreadspire's bridge reeked of ion oil and the sharp tang of conquest. Panels hummed beneath metal boots, crimson veins pulsing along the spearhead hull like the breath of a beast at rest. Kareth Tarth leaned on the rail, coal-black eyes fixed on the projection dome. The feed from Asgard III replayed silently, a loop on Dominion channels. They watched it not with regret, but as record-keeping. For Kareth, it was math, clean, ledgered. Beside him, Officer Varric traced lines on the display with thin claws. "The humans have answered," he said, flat and factual, like a closed door. Kareth let the bridge speak instead, the subtle clicks of motion, the pulse of commands. The crew didn't react with fear. They listened like predators sensing a cornered target. "What did they call it?" Varric asked. He liked the poetry of enemies. Labels made things easier to kill. "An answer, a warning. They declared us enemies." Kareth tasted the words like steel between teeth. The bridge rippled with restrained amusement. Varric's carapace brightened, a Dominion version of a smile. "Good. Let them declare. It'll look cleaner when we burn their ships." Kareth studied the human admiral's image a beat longer. Strauss, with his discipline forged into posture. Humans wrapped loss in order. He admired that. It made them predictable. "Signal Warlord Svekhal," Kareth said. "Inform him of my directive. We're preparing a second wave. The next strikes will hit where their defenses are thinnest. The Council will learn what clean fear looks like. Varric's claws moved. Acknowledged. Orders hissed through the comms lattice below. A static blade opened. Direct contact to Svekhal's net. Kareth watched the exchange unfold. Brief, ritualistic, then blunt. His orders went out. The warlord's acknowledgement came back like rusted gears, grinding through stone. Across space, the intel reached human circuits without ceremony. Just wait. At Argus Station, Officer Cameron sat still, fingers brushing data feeds like he could undo them. The holo table glowed with names, signals, timestamps. They'd traced the Dreadspire's signature, found pilot chatter. It was messy work, human work. The briefing room smelled of recycled air and old coffee. Strauss entered without ceremony. He didn't sit. He stood behind the holo table, watching as the Dreadspire appeared, spear-shaped, cold, and clinical. Then came the cascade. Potential targets, fleet positions, weak spots. Identify the commander, Strauss said. Not a question, a task. Cameron's hands were steady now. A name surfaced. Kareth Hearth. Attached. Flight logs. Voice scans. Another followed. Warlord Svekhal Zar. Strauss let the name sit in the air. Then, options? Cameron stepped up, quick talking, all motion. Schematics lit the table in response. We've identified windows in Sector 12, colonies with weak orbital defenses. The Dreadspire moves like a needle. Fast, narrow, hard to track. Same pattern as Asgard 3. More names flashed. Havrin 4, Orly Station, Keston's Fold. Places with children, supply depots, school domes. Just like Asgard 3. Cameron spoke low. They'll hit where it hurts, where people can't run. How many? Strauss asked. Cameron exhaled. 6 worlds, 3 million lives. Full evac? 12 cycles, if we move now. Strauss did the math in his head. Then, start. Civilians, hospitals, priority lists, mobilize transport fleets. No heroics, just get them out. No one questioned. Cameron moved like a conductor. He updated manifests. No drama, just work. Strauss stood there, already thinking 3 steps ahead. Evacuations, defense placements, the hidden machinery of a war just beginning. Then, we're sending a retrieval team. 4 men. Covert operation. Objective is Kareth. Alive. The room stiffened, but no one spoke. Cameron finally broke the silence. You want a live capture? From the Dreadspire itself? During combat? Strauss nodded once. Exactly. While their eyes are on the battle, we'll be inside their command spine. No speeches, no warnings. We hit hard, we get out. The holo table responded with a flicker. 4 profiles rising like ghosts across its surface. Lieutenant Marcus Vale, Jonah Harker, Cyrus Brand, Elias March. No medals, no citations. Just a record of operations that didn't officially exist. Cold focus and field authority. Tactical to the bone. The kind of leader who never raised his voice. He just got quieter when the stakes climbed. Harker, the old soldier. Straight lines, no sentiment. His briefs were 5 words or fewer, and his loyalty was earned, not assumed. Brand. The edge. Ran hot when others flinched. Technical genius with a mouth on him, and the scars to back it up. He packed the gear, but his real weapon was insight under pressure. March. The youngest, but not green. His conviction showed in every move, heart worn close to the surface. He was the one who still believed in the why, even when the how got ugly. Strauss read the room, then the table. These 4. Veil leads. Confirmations come to me and me alone. No press, no chatter, no public briefs. This is dark. Cameron nodded slowly. Understood. Strauss looked again at the evacuation grids. Every name on the list was another hour bleeding away. He didn't pace. He just stared until the moment sharpened. Then he said, "Start briefings." Team goes operational in 20 cycles. No delays, no mistakes. Outside, the stars were still indifferent. But below, inside a sealed training bay, the team began to move. No spotlights, no insignia, just 4 shadows preparing for an insertion no one would admit existed. Vale moved with quiet command, adjusting weapons with surgical calm. Harker muttered coordinates under his breath, already running breach scenarios. Brand calibrated the charge grid, his grin crooked and teeth tight. March checked every seal on his suit twice, not for fear, but because civilians would die if he missed a detail. They didn't talk about glory, or justice, or vengeance. They just made ready to reach into the Dominion's throat and take something back. Strauss watched from above, eyes unreadable. The council would have its sessions, its cycles, its procedural hand-wringing. Humanity had chosen a different doctrine. Payback. The rain on Havrin 4 came down like a burial shroud, heavy, smearing the sky and soaking the tarmac until the ground reflected only gray. For the colonists, it was a final indignity. For the pilots and deck crews, it was just a variable to work around. They had routes, loadouts, lift schedules. Grief wasn't on the checklist. Inside the transit domes, families moved fast. Parents carried children tight to their chests. No one looked back. The militia stood in hangars, armored and silent. Their hands smelled of oil, smoke, and the fear they'd learned to ignore. Farmers, freighters, teachers, all now soldiers working by the book. Up on Argus Station, Admiral Strauss watched the evacuation unfold across the holotable. He didn't speak often, but when he did, the room shifted. Priority 1, he said. Hospitals, nurseries, no half-lifts, every seat filled. Status lights blinked across the feed. Transports clearing, manifest codes filed. Lift-off vectors turning from red to green. Each was a silent victory against the clock. The Dominion didn't wait. Krail Raiders arrived first, sleek black craft built for surgical panic. They hit hard and fast. Comm towers, auxiliary ports, abandoned corridors. But the colony was already empty. The last transport had cleared orbit hours earlier. Civilians, medical staff, and defense personnel, all gone. What remained was infrastructure, silent ports, cold domes, and blank corridors. From Argus Station, Captain Cameron watched the strike unfold across sensor feeds and orbitals. He tracked blast signatures, power outages, and collapsing relay nodes, all of it meaningless now. "They're late," he muttered. The Krail had come expecting panic. Instead, they found silence. No targets, no resistance, just a ghost town scorched by theatrics. Above the colony, the Vrykar dread spire lingered in distant orbit, silent and unseen, like a wolf arriving to find the herd already moved on. They missed the heart. While civilians fled and raiders harried the outer districts of Havrin 4, another operation was already in motion. Quieter, sharper, and meant to cut deeper than evacuation orders ever could. The Harrow didn't carry insignias or fleet designations. She wasn't polished steel and banners. She was rust, patchwork plating, and false codes. From the outside, she looked like a pirate barge, the kind of ship that scraped salvage lanes and hunted convoys for spare parts and stray cargo. Sloppy, disposable, unremarkable. That was the point. Inside her darkened hull sat 4 men. Hidden beneath signal dampeners and camouflage netting, they moved with the stillness of weapons waiting to be drawn. Lieutenant Marcus Vale sat at the center, checking harness straps with calm precision. Jonah Harker leaned against the bulkhead, syncing comm bands without speaking. Cyrus Brand thumbed through a portable slate, schematics dancing across the display. Elias March double-checked environmental seals, methodical and quiet. This wasn't war, not in any official capacity. This was a ghost-op. Vale broke the silence. "Signature?" Jonah answered without looking up. "Dirty, radiant smears perfect. Reads like a scavenger with heat leaks and busted ballast. We're invisible." The Harrow had been running dark for nearly 3 cycles, threading gaps between patrol nets, gliding through relay fog. Their orders were simple: infiltrate a Dominion supply line, extract a node-level prize, and disappear. No survivors, if necessary. No survivors, if cleaner. They found their mark: a convoy running light. 2 freighters, 1 escort cutter, just enough to carry value, not enough to scream danger. Vale didn't speak again. He just gave the nod. The Harrow pounced, grapples hissed, cables bit into hull plating. Boarding locks breached sealed corridors with pressurized cutters. In seconds, the Black Ops team moved like scalpel incisions. Fast, tight, surgical. The escort fired once, caught the edge of a vent array, but it was already too late. Inside the freighter, the pirates moved like ghosts. Crew members scattered. No one died. Yet. The team neutralized resistance, located the bridge, and bagged the ship's captain in under 4 minutes. There was no need for cruelty, only urgency. They didn't torture. They exerted pressure. Tactical tools, confined air, claimed they had no reason to keep him breathing. The captain cracked faster than expected. Not a zealot, just a mid-tier logistics officer with no appetite for pain. They pulled comm codes, access tags, shipping manifests, and station registry data. Then, Cyrus found it. A sealed crate tucked behind supply packs, Dominion warning glyphs etched along the side. He checked the seal twice, then ran a heat wand over it. Still warm. He cracked the casing. Inside, a Dominion shield modulation node. Not a full generator, but a sensor core the size of a helmet, coated in adaptive latticework and humming with residual power. "Shield modulator," Cyrus said, reverent and grim. "Fresh. Looks like it just came out of test alignment." Vale didn't hesitate. "We take it." The node wasn't just hardware. It held firmware, a diagnostic brain for Dominion shielding systems. Enough to study their frequency harmonics, identify seams, and maybe even spoof them. Not enough to bring the Dreadspire down, but enough to poke it in the eye. Before they left, Jonah dragged a crewman's body into a side corridor, left it burnt and staged. Not cruelty, misdirection. The Dominion had to believe this was a pirate job. Something random, uncoordinated. Not human military precision. The Harrow unhooked her claws and vanished into relay fog before the Dominion knew what had hit them. On Argus, Cameron ran the data sent by the ghost ops through quantum analyzers. The node told them what they needed to know. The Dominion's shielding lattice wasn't flawless. It was elegant, but not invulnerable. It used harmonic phasing, modulated through a core sync. If that sync could be spoofed, even briefly, the shield would accept a false handshake. Strauss read the report in silence. Around him, staff whispered. Analysts drew models. Engineers quietly sketched ideas they'd never dared suggest aloud. So, Strauss said, they patch by frequency. They handshake each node. A pause. Good. That's something we can exploit. No one asked how. Orders moved. Systems shifted. Engineers worked quietly in deep bays to build a tool that could lie to a god ship's heart. Outside, the Dominion raiders kept circling. The Dreadspire changed headings. Behind them, Argus launched another evac transport. Another set of names loaded and lifted. One more piece of the job done. War wasn't chaos. It was a checklist. The data was clear. Dominion shields weren't perfect. That was all they needed. Orders went out. Ships resupplied. Black Ops debriefed. Somewhere deep inside the analytics wing, Cameron watched the shield spoof render in real time. 10 seconds of silence inside the Dominion's most powerful ships. From orbit, the stars looked unchanged. Cold. Silent. But below deck, the war had already begun moving. Faster. Sharper. The checklist was complete. Now came the blade. The war room aboard Argus Station was cold and stripped of ceremony. No politics. No delays. The enemy fleet was dug in around the Night Spire, the Dominion's surface fortress, a massive installation that towered from the crust of a hostile moon. Around it, the Krael fleet formed a shield wall of black hulls and bleeding weapons arrays. The Vrakar Dreadspire remained in orbit just beyond. Command ship, symbol, and hammer. Strauss stood, hands behind his back. His voice was level. Kareth Karth is on the Vrakar. We go for him. Alive. No delays. Just results. In, out, clean. 4 men stood with him. Quiet, still. Lieutenant Marcus Vale. Calm. Precise. Strike team lead. Jonah Harker. Blunt and unshakable. Rifle always ready. Cyrus Brand. Tech and demolition. Grinning like a man with something to break. Elias March. Youngest. Surest. Strauss continued. We hit the Night Spire with everything we have. Their attention stays on the surface. Vale nodded. While the fleet bleeds their perimeter, we breach the Vrakar. No signals, Strauss added. No comms, unless you have them in chains. Harker gave a grunt. Works for me. March's voice was colder than usual. He won't see us coming. Strauss turned toward the main deck. I lead the assault from the Armageddon. We give them a spectacle. The hollow shifted. Arcs of blue traced attack vectors slamming into the Night Spire's surface defenses. Farther off, a lone line traced toward the Dreadspire in orbit, silent and unmarked. Prep for launch, Strauss ordered. Make it clean. The Armageddon tore from Argus Station like a blade drawn free. Its escorts formed up in tight formation, drives igniting, weapons charged. On the bridge, Strauss stood at the viewport, silent, focused. Engage jump. The stars bent and broke. They emerged in the heart of Dominion space. Black ships turned to meet them. Plasma lances flared to life. The Night Spire loomed large below. The Vraykar hovered above like a predator waiting for a reason. "Begin assault," Strauss ordered. Railguns roared. The void split open with kinetic fire. Human ships surged toward the Night Spire. Dominion batteries answered, burning holes in the black. Below, the planet cracked under bombardment. Above, a cloaked dagger-shaped craft slipped from the Armageddon's belly. Inside, the Black Ops team moved without a word. Vale checked his rifle. Harker ran a final sync. Brand powered the breach charges. March locked his visor. "Targets in the command sector," Vale said. "We breach, we extract, we vanish." They ran cold, spoofed, wrapped in the stolen shield node's mimic signature. 10 seconds of invisibility. Just enough. The Vraykar filled the viewport. Jagged, red-veined, immense. Vale's voice cut through the silence. "Go!" The infiltration craft latched onto a blind spot near the dorsal spine. Charges opened a path. The team moved fast. 4 ghosts stepping into the monster's throat. No alarms. Not yet. They swept the corridors like phantoms. 2 guards. Silent takedowns. No bodies left to find. They reached the inner core. Dominion glyphs lit the walls. Pulse sensors blinked, but didn't scream. Then came the resistance. A Krail patrol turned the corner. 4 soldiers. Full armor. Harker opened with 3 shots, fast and clean. Brand dropped a mine behind them, just in case. March covered the rear, eyes never blinking. Finally, they breached the command tier. The chamber was dark, humming, alive. And Kareth stood there, massive, armored. His claws wrapped around a control rod, gaze fixed on the battle below. He turned slowly, almost amused. "Humans sent insects?" he growled. His first strike cracked the deck. One of the team staggered. Vale gave no order. They'd trained for this. Harker dropped to one knee, fired. The blast staggered Kareth. Brand's shock charge slammed into the warlord's back. He howled. March lunged, arms locking with brutal force. The chains hit. Kareth fought, roared, but the locks closed. He fell, raging, alive, bound. Vale hit comms. "Target secured." Above, the battle turned. Strauss gave the order. "Target the flagship," he said. "End it." Railguns fired. The Vraykar buckled, shields shorting in flickers of false light. Systems failed. Fires broke across its spine. But Kareth was already gone, dragged from the heart of his war machine by 4 ghosts no one saw coming. Then, the human fleet unleashed hell. Dominion ships broke apart under relentless fire. The Vraykar split down its spine, torn to drifting wreckage. Across the stars, billions watched as humanity returned the Dominion's cruelty tenfold. Then the final broadcast lit the galaxy. Kareth Hearth appeared, chained and broken, forced to his knees. Behind him, the flag of Earth stretched bold and unshaken. His molten eyes still glared, but the weight of his fall silenced even the proudest voices of the Dominion. The announcer's words carried across every channel. Earth has captured its enemy. And now, justice begins. The Galactic Council chamber was a furnace of voices. Holographic delegates argued in a dozen tongues, while translators fought to keep up. Human representatives held their ground on the floor, faces set, posture like seasoned soldiers, while accusations rained down from every direction. "You have provoked a war," one elder representative hissed. You dragged the Dominion into open conflict and baptized the galaxy in blood. You have shown the galaxy a spectacle, another countered, quieter, the kind of voice that scored deals and then buried grudges. You have stepped beyond restraint. Some delegates wanted condemnation, some wanted sanctions. A handful, in private, watched with a thin smile. There are races that remember what a single bold strike can do to a long-standing hegemon. And then, the broadcast cut. Without warning, the council's entire channel blinked to black. Delegates froze mid-sentence. Static reigned for half a breath. Then a new signal took its place. The feed switched to a different hall. Argus Station's Judgment Hall, empty now only for the seconds before it filled. The room had been rearranged with a single purpose. Seats had been stripped away from the ceremonial risers to make a vast floor for the condemned and those who would pass sentence. At the front, a raised platform held a hollow table that still glowed with the images from Nightspire. Behind it, the banners of Earth hung stark and plain. Admiral Strauss entered in full dress uniform, medals minimal, bearing clean, the cut of a man who had chosen function over ornament. At his side were senior officers, and a step behind, the 4 Marines who had carried the chain that pulled Kareth from his ship. Lieutenant Marcus Vale, Jonah Harker, Cyrus Brand, Elias March. They stood like rock, each carrying the small, private marks of combat. Scars, a missing tooth, a cracked knuckle, human details against alien outrage. Kareth Hearth was brought forward, chained, bruised, his armor dented, but stubborn. He walked with the gait of someone used to command, not supplication. Cameras tracked him in close. The galaxy watched. Strauss touched the hollow control. The image that filled the hall, and every feed in the known systems, was not lectures or legalese. It was footage. Ash and ruin, burning settlements, the collapse of domes and people running through fluorescent rain. Asgard 3 rebroadcast in cold, exact detail. Faces of the dead, children, cries that had once been muffled by the Dominion screens now screamed into every home. The hall was silent enough to hear the mechanical click of a comms relay. Strauss let the images roll their testimony. When the footage ended, he did not look away. "For the massacre of Asgard 3, he said, voice even. "For the slaughter of innocents, the sentence is death." Kareth's molten eyes flicked around the room. He raised his chin. "You call me butcher," he snarled, "yet you strike from the shadows. Cowards hiding behind laws you bend as needed." "You killed a whole planet," Strauss said, cutting him off. "You will answer for it now." The procedure was clinical. A firing squad of Earth Marines took position, drilled, expressionless, faces hidden by visors for the cameras. The line stepped forward. The hall counted the seconds like a heartbeat. There was no theatrics beyond the camera's relentless gaze. 3 shots cracked. Kareth staggered, slumped forward. The chains clattered against the metal floor. For the briefest moment, the cameras registered something else in Strauss's face. An unguarded flicker, an almost human memory of loss, before he closed it again. They gave the cameras a tight shot. Strauss looked straight into the lens, as if into a person's eye. "Warlord Svekhal-Zar," he said. "You're next." The name landed in the feeds like a detonator. It was a promise and a threat in one measured sentence. Inside the council chamber, the broadcasting provoked different reactions. Some delegates erupted in fury, accusing humanity of lawlessness. Others went quiet, faces shaded. A handful, out of deference or cold calculation, nodded subtly. The Krail Dominion's influence, once carved in stone, showed a hairline crack. Small vignettes folded across the galaxy. A merchant guild in the outer rings, quietly removing Dominion regalia from its market stalls. A warrior culture on a fringe world, raising cups in a tavern and cheering. Noisy, crude, private. A neutral scientific collective exchanged urgent communiques. The broadcasts had become less a signal and more a catalyst. Among these reactions was one that mattered in a way Strauss could not have predicted. The Sulthar, a mid-tier species more hunter than engineer, sent envoys. They were not polished. Their leaders carried the weathered look of people who made tools for the chase and kept their technology pragmatic, not ornate. They arrived with an offering, a crude but vicious weapon used in their hunts, a palm-sized device that flared with blue fire and tore prey apart on a molecular level. "We have used it for game," the Sulthar representative said, through translators that clipped and missed half of the nuance. "It is not elegant. It kills what it touches. We do not know your enemies' bodies. We do not know how to make it true for war. We give it because we hunt, and we respect hunters." The Sulthar weapon was a crude hand plasma unit, an odd, serrated palm well that fed a short, concentrated burst. Their engineers had never adapted it for different biologies. They had never needed to. But their design principle was simple and savage. Destroy structure from the inside out. Humans took the device with a scientist's hands, shifting from reverence to curiosity in the same breath. Military labs at Argus moved with a speed born of war. Pathologists and xenobiologists worked through the night. The condemned body of Kareth, preserved in cold stasis, was delivered to a secure facility. The weapon was reverse engineered, its output analyzed, measured, recalibrated. They could not test live on a Dominion soldier without starting a new war. They tested on what they had. Kareth's corpse. The chamber that held the body smelled sterile and mechanical. Machines hummed like metal nerves buzzing under tension. Scientists argued in clipped bursts. Engineers adjusted coils and capacitors. Surgeons watched with clinical detachment and a private, dull thrill at the unknown. The prototype discharged. It was not a bright, glorious beam, nothing cinematic. It was a focused, cold pulse pressed against flesh and armor. The first contact was small, a smoking bloom against mottled alien skin. Then the tissue gave. At first it was a collapse, muscle fibers unspooling, color running like ink. The skin softened, then sloughed. The corpse's structure failed like a poorly bound book. For minutes, machines recorded the decay as it happened. A sag of mass, a hiss of steam, a smell the technicians later would call metallic and raw. The dead body did not vanish into light. It liquefied, then pooled. Then the residue vaporized under heat and vacuum, leaving a dark, oily stain that instruments measured but couldn't classify. It was ugly, practical, final. The room held its breath. Then a different sound rose, sharp, ecstatic, and a little frightened. The military brass recognized the advantage. The scientists scribbled equations. Somewhere down the corridors, men and women in uniform began to plan new forms of that crude hand plasma. Shaped, tuned, and made lethal to the Krail physiology. They ran repeat tests on tissue samples and simulants until the prototype was no longer a Sulthar hunting tool, but a purpose-built implement. Compact, terrible, calibrated to the Dominion's molecular structures. A new weapon had been born from a hunter's ingenuity and humanity's will to survive. Meanwhile, the galaxy woke to the knowledge that a warlord had died by human hands, and another had been named. The coordinates came from fractured cryal relays, signal patterns buried in the node the Black Ops team had retrieved weeks ago. Not a location, but a convergence. The Dominion's remaining strength had pulled inward, retreating to a dense star cluster at the edge of known space. At its center was a gas giant with a single moon. Yervin, barren and brutal. There, warlord Svekhal Zar waited. The council issued no statement. The Kryal sent no envoy. The galaxy watched in silence. Strauss sent a fleet. Inside the war room aboard the Armageddon, the mood was taut but surgical. Admiral Strauss stood over the updated schematics of Dominion ship formations, his fingers grazing the newest targeting overlays. Red dots where shield harmonics would collapse, new plasma weapon signatures flared, and now, new strike opportunities drawn from a dead warlord's flesh. 10 seconds of vulnerability, he said, quiet to Cameron. That's all we need. The young officer nodded. The adapted railguns are ready. They'll punch through hull. The new payload handles the rest. Strauss nodded once. Then we finish it. The fleet jumped as one. 100 ships tore out of FTL in perfect formation, dropping into the edge of the Yervin system, with drive trails still burning. The Krail Dominion was waiting. War cruisers surged to intercept, rising from orbital dark space like armored beasts. Plasma lances already charged, formation walls snapping into place. But the humans didn't engage head-on. Instead, the fleet split, sliding low and wide beneath the Krail line, engines cold, vectoring for the underbelly of the formation. They didn't charge. They struck. Precise, coordinated, aiming straight for the gaps the Vraykar had once carved into Earth's memory. Within moments, the Armageddon gave the signal. Spoof modules engaged. Krail Dominion shields blinked out. 10 seconds. Railguns fired. But not the old ones. The first adapted round hit a cruiser's flank. It pierced the armor like foil. And then, the weapon's real function took hold. Inside the breach, Krail Dominion soldiers scrambled to seal the hull. They didn't get the chance. The moment the round's payload ignited, the air thickened with molecular breakdown. Krail flesh buckled, armor corroded, bones twisted, then evaporated. One moment, a scream. The next, silence. On every deck touched by the blast, bodies fell apart like wet sand. They didn't burn. They collapsed from the inside, melted, then disintegrated. Confirmed effect, said the comms officer aboard the Armageddon. Target decks gone. Structural collapse underway. Nothing's walking out of that breach. Strauss barely blinked. Shift fire to the next shield cluster. Launch in tandem. Don't give them time to adapt. More ships died in seconds. Blasted open, then gutted from within. The Solthar-inspired payloads didn't just kill. They left fear. No scream. No time. Just absence. The Krail Dominion tried to retreat. Strauss saw it coming. Cut their flank, he ordered. Box them in. Push them into the moon's gravity well. As they moved, Krail Dominion comms opened, for the first time in cycles. Warlord Svekhal Zar himself appeared on screen, armor dripping black resin, his face part machine, part fury. You dare bring plague to our blood, he growled, voice fractured by static. You desecrate war. Strauss stepped into frame. You started this. Svekhal Zar roared. We are Krail! We are the stars! Strauss gave no reply. The comms cut. The final push came swift and without mercy. The Dominion flagship Calavex took 3 rounds before its midsection buckled. The adaptive payload detonated inside its central chamber, cutting through alloy, air, and organ. From orbit, it looked like the ship folded in on itself, peeled like fruit, and collapsed into the moon's gravity. The rest followed. Some tried to run. Few escaped. The Krail Dominion fleet now had drifted in pieces, burning across the stars. When it was over, only silence filled the comms. Aboard the Armageddon, Strauss stood at the viewport. He didn't speak. Behind him, Cameron whispered, "They're gone. What's left isn't coming back." Strauss nodded. He simply said, "Signal the Council." The transmission reached every channel. On screen, a Krail battlecruiser adrift, its hull split open, its command deck vacant. The image panned slowly. No voiceover. No anthem. Just wreckage. Then, Strauss appeared. "This warlord is gone. Humanity doesn't negotiate with monsters." A pause. "To the races of this galaxy, Earth will not wait for another massacre. Anyone who tries to strike us will be met with the same answer. End of broadcast." And somewhere in deep space, a single Krail scout ship disengaged comms and disappeared beyond the fringe systems. No signal, no distress call. Its crew didn't speak. They only ran. It would be a long time before the Krail Dominion returned to the galaxy, if ever.